brand new at this, so bear with me. I'd like to welcome you all to Unity Church for Sunday morning, and to Unity as a way of life for the rest of your life. The chaplain today is John Anderson. I see him clear in the back. He'll be available in the prayer room from 11:30 to 11:50 this morning. We'd like to welcome everybody and ask you to join us for coffee and treats after the service in our kitchen area. I'd like you now, whoops, much taller than me. I'd like to have you join me in prayer if you would. If you would close your eyes and quiet your minds. Lord and way shower, help us picture what we love most about our lives. We say thank you for that gift. Lord, now help us picture what we love least about our lives. And with the same enthusiasm, help us say thank you again. All is from you, and we trust your ever-present care. In your name, amen. The Unity Worldwide Ministries Foundation statement is a beautiful piece, and I'd appreciate it if you would join me in saying it. There is one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God the good, omnipotent. We also have the Unity Church of Ames affirmation. Through Christ's Spirit in us, we create a better church and a better world. So be it. Our daily word will be shared with us this morning by Charlene.
That was fun. The word for the day is generosity. I am a generous giver to life. I share my time, talent, and treasure as naturally as a tree gives its shade, fruit, and leaves. This is most true when I am centered in the source of my inherent abundance, the Christ within. On occasion, I may forget who I am and think I don't have enough to give. As soon as I notice these false thoughts, I remember how trees give without effort. I give from this consciousness of generosity and ease, and I am richly blessed. My generosity is supported by a faith that knows I am always supported and protected. The tree does not worry whether its needs will be met. It does not negotiate what it will get in return. It freely offers itself. I root myself in this naturally prosperous way of being and generously share my gifts. And the scripture comes from Proverbs 11, verse 25. A generous person will be enriched, and one who gives water will get water. The word was generosity.
Thank you, Charlene. I take great pleasure in introducing Todd. Willing or not, here comes God and Todd Davis.
Thank you, Elaine. We're both newbies today. Good morning, my friends.
Good morning.
How's it going, eh? Little Willie won't go home 'cause he can't push Willie round. Willie won't go. Do you remember that song from the summer of 1974? No, I was a young kid, and I really didn't understand why Willie wouldn't go home. I just couldn't figure it out. It's like, was he an older kid who just didn't like being at home, or he was being stubborn, or Of course, I took it literally, and I just could not figure it out in my literal mind back then. Anyway, we have this neighbor has a cat who comes over incessantly, comes over for food, and if we let her in the actual house, he will not leave us alone. So we put him on the porch, and always wants to come in and just will not go home. This cat is more stubborn than 5 mules in a bathtub. So there are times I have to kick the cat out of the house just for him to get some exercise. Anyway, and you'll never guess what the cat's name is. Willie. Yeah. Well, anyway, will is one of the most important powers of the 12 powers of unity. And it's one that I've certainly had a lot of challenges with, and I'm sure many of you have had a lot of the same challenges. The power of will is very closely related to the power of understanding, which we studied in July, last month, and which we studied last month. And both of these powers are centered in the forehead, in front of the brain, and they really do work in tandem and must cooperate with each other for divine will to happen. And what I understand is that understanding without will is being stuck. Very stuck. I've been there. I'm an expert. I know what that's like. I'm also an expert at this next one too. Will without understanding equals frantic action without direction. And I've been there too. And the way I equate this is a steering wheel is the understanding and the will is the rest of the car. First of all, if someone gives you a steering wheel, please let me know. I'd be interested in hearing about it. Because there's not a whole lot you can do with a steering wheel. You need the rest of the car, which is the will. You need the wheels, you need the engine, you need the transmission, and you need the body of the car so you can sit in it and move forward. So what does divine will look like? Well, it probably looks like as many different things as there are people in the world. Humility, surrender. Both of these things are somewhat related in that they are things that are actually much easier said than done. For me, I would say that humility shows up in that kind of, it's real subtle in letting go and feeling like I don't have to grasp something with an iron fist. It's realizing that I'm not the big shot, I don't have all the answers, but it's not like flipping a switch. It is so subtle, it is so gradual, and it really is a process. Surrender, and also forgiveness. Forgiveness is not easy for most people. And if you had a father like mine, he would talk to me about forgiveness. He'd say, "Oh, Todd, I see this is bothering you. Let's just take it into meditation for 10 or 15 minutes and just visualize forgiving the person. And you'll be fine. Then you'll be done with it." But my friends, that's not what Jesus said. Jesus said you don't forgive 7 times. You forgive 70 times 7 times, which 7 is a metaphysical number for completion. So the truth is, you forgive until you're done. If it takes a month, that's fine. Consider yourself the lucky ones. If it takes years, but you keep doing it and doing it and doing it until in your heart you feel that depth. You feel that sense of being complete with that person or that situation, and most importantly, forgiving yourself. So what happens is eventually the peacefulness because of the trust of doing these things. And Jesus said in John chapter 5, verse 30, "I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just because I seek to do not my own will, but the will of him who sent me." And here again, I don't mean to sound repetitive, and please bear with me if I repeat myself. That's not my intention here. It's so subtle, and it happens on so many different levels for me. There are times that I think I'm doing the right thing, and yeah, this is divine will, this is divine order, but it doesn't quite feel that way. There's an edge to me. There's an edge of impatience. There's an edge of irritability or frustration. It would be like watching Todd with a whole bunch of mosquitoes around his head. Just kind of this, like I've got a bee in my bonnet or something. And if I'm in that energy field, I know that I'm not trusting. I know that I'm not really in that divine flow and in that divine will. Which brings me to the next point, and that is, in unity we talk about the ego. And oftentimes the ego is presented in such a way that the ego needs to be tamed. It needs to be defeated. It needs to be put in its place. Well, the negative pole of ego is when it's all about you. The extreme pole is narcissism. The ego, it's all about me. I want it my way. I'm going to do it my way. You watch me. You watch me do this. I'm going to put this square peg in a round hole. Just you watch me. And then I become exasperated when it doesn't work. That's my will. That's the ego in its more negative pole, and what I say, edging God out, which is something many of you probably have heard too, is that's what the ego is. However, and this is very important, the ego is very important. It's important to have a strong, healthy, mature ego. If I did not have any ego, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be on this planet. It's the strength of the ego that says, I'm going to do this. It's the strength of the ego that says, God is in charge. Really surrendering and letting God be in charge requires the healthy aspect of the ego. God gave us an ego for a reason. It's God-given. And so that part of the ego it's not about defeating it, it's about tuning yourself to it and living with it, and which I consider embracing God's order. And that's something I actually made up several years ago in talking to Deb about this whole thing. And why do they say the ego is all bad? It's what you do with it, just like any other aspect of your life. Well, what holds us back from embracing divine order and really letting go and letting God? Fear of the unknown. Well, what's going to happen? Well, I've got to be in charge. If I'm not in charge, I'm just being lazy. I'm just doing nothing. I'm just worthless. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But we don't know that. Fear of loss of control. Boy, especially in our Western culture, we sure love to be in control. If you watch TV, which I watch very little of, but if you watch some of the ads, it's about you're in control. It's mine. It's my choice. You're in control. I'm in control. So it's that fear of loss of control. A reality to have to be rigorously honest. Again, easier said than done. It's easy to say, well, yeah, I'm honest, but are we really? And like anything else, there's multiple depths to that honesty. And sometimes it's really hard to see. It's really, really hard to see. I don't know, case in point is when I believe that I'm doing for something that I've done my whole life that makes perfect sense to me, but then I retreat from it for a little while and reflect and breathe and meditate and pray, and I realize it's been a self-defeating behavior, and it's been something done out of fear. So it's the depth to have to be rigorously honest. And a need to be vulnerable to God and your own authenticity. Oh, did I just use that V word? Oh God, vulnerable. Oh my God. Well, it begins with V and ends with Y. So, vulnerability, I don't like vulnerability. I will be completely honest. It's back to being honest. I cannot stand vulnerability. However, what I realized in reading the book, I'm trying to remember the name of the author who wrote the book about vulnerability, and I can share that with you later as I remember, is that my need to be vulnerable isn't so much to be truthful and isn't so much to be vulnerable to other people. It's about being vulnerable to God. It's about being vulnerable to myself, to my own highest truth. And then the vulnerability to other people comes as they earn your trust, and not a moment sooner. Sometimes it's hard to let go of a habitual position, especially if we have held it near and dear to our hearts for so many years. It's not like flipping a switch. It takes time and it's a process. So, what are some examples of self-will? Because these can be kind of tricky to pinpoint. And it challenges us to really look at how we're behaving and what our beliefs are. I'll share my experience. I read a book by Robert Augustus Masters called Spiritual Bypassing. I think it was back in 10 or 11. It's been a few years ago now. And I was just awestruck about all the different ways in which we want to spiritually bypass and be simplistic about our journey. Wrote affirmations and denials. I am all about affirmations and denials. They work, and they work beautifully. The only challenge I have about that is to say them with passion, say them mindfully, say them with belief, and what's helped me is to make up my own affirmations. And realize it's not about the outcome I want, it's about an attunement to being peaceful, being relaxed. Treasure mapping. I did this in my 20s, and I'll be frank and honest, it didn't work. And it didn't work because it was too simplistic. It didn't work because as I put the pictures of the car and the fancy vacation and all this other stuff on there, I did not have a deep enough understanding at the time of how spirit really works. And I also had not worked through my core grief and pain around issues of prosperity. And so it didn't work. There was other work to be done. So if someone said, Todd, you got to do a treasure map for me today, this is what the treasure map would look like. It is safe for me to relax. One statement, with God it is safe for me to relax. And then I would put up pictures of waterfalls and mountains and nature and enjoyable activities around it. Lake Superior, camping, staying in a nice place on the lake somewhere or the ocean. That's what it would be. One simple statement, because it encompasses everything else. Intellectualizing feelings and experiences. Saying, well, I feel this way, but you feel it in your head and not in your heart. Instead of saying, well, I've transcended these feelings, and it's like, as long as we're in skin, we don't transcend feelings. They're part of who we are. It's part of our divine human experiences. And feelings are uncomfortable, I understand sometimes, but you can't bypass them and expect them to grow. Rationalizing and perhaps even asking others, what's in your consciousness that created your undesirable situation? That is metaphysical malpractice. It is judgmental and it's playing God. And it's not God's will. That's self-will. All of us are responsible to honor and accept each other's paths. Blind compassion, pseudo-transcendent, and trying to take shortcuts in personal growth and magical and simplistic thinking. And my father was big into magical thinking, simplistic slogan, platitudinal statements to fix things. And that doesn't work either. It hasn't worked for me. It's doing the inner work that Spirit leads us into that has really helped tremendously. Which brings me to the next point, in which I've really grown tremendously over the last 6 months or so, is understanding my identity. In Unity, people call it consciousness, but me understanding it as my identity really has helped me a lot. So, I was working with this person named Joan Sotkin. She's a holistic financial counselor from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And she talked about, we repeat our habits. It's so easy to be locked into doing our will instead of Spirit's will just because of our habits and our identity of how we see ourselves. Over the last several months, I've come to understand this more and more and more, and how it's affected my financial identity. Which there again, you don't flip the switch by saying, well, I am prosperous, I am prosperous, I am prosperous, I am whole, God gives me everything I need. It's digging in deeper and saying, I am open to seeing myself differently and how I relate to prosperity. Thank you, God. And different things work for different people. That's just how it's worked for me. I only share my experience. I have friends on Facebook who have the same interests in their 40s as they did when I knew them as a child and a teenager. Nothing wrong with this whatsoever. It just illustrates that it's somewhat difficult to change your identity. We tend to go with what we know. And I'm not sure I'm going with that, so I'll stop with that. Anyway, I'd like to close today with a story that has to do with self-will and divine will, as most of our stories do have elements of both. I was a freshman at Iowa State, lived in the towers. It was spring break my first year. I owned this really interesting vehicle that was a 1964 and a half Mustang, but I used to call it the Chintzy Rustang because it was really nothing to brag about. This car would go 70 miles an hour down a really steep hill with a stiff tailwind. on a good day. So anyway, I was getting ready to leave for spring break. It was Thursday night, and I was going to leave Friday morning to head back to Ottumwa, which is the town in which I grew up. And I went to sleep in my dorm room. It was in the corner of my floor. I was asleep for about a half an hour, and I heard a bunch of guys who were really drunk come back up to our floor. They lived on our floor. And they kept making noise. And so I opened up the door and shouted at them, to shut up and quit making so much noise. I'm trying to sleep. And then eventually they calmed down. It took a while. So I went back to sleep, or so I tried to. It didn't really work the way I had hoped. I could not fall back asleep. So it was about 11:30 or so at night. I said, heck with it. I don't care. I don't care. I'm leaving now. I'm going to drive back to Ottumwa in the middle of the night. So I grabbed all my belongings and I'd be gone for a week, all my clothes and everything else I needed to be gone for a week. And walked out to the huge parking lot, retrieved my Mustang, retrieved my car, parked it out in front of the Wilson Hall. I went down the elevator with all my stuff and loaded it in the car, and off I went. I'm driving my bucket of bolts down Highway 30 and then south on Interstate 35 to the Mixmaster, and then started heading east towards Colfax. About 5 miles east of Colfax, I noticed my car started really pulling to the right, more and more and more. So of course I proceeded to curse at the car and scream and get all upset about this piece of junk that I have. I pulled off at Colfax, which is my turnoff anyway to take the connecting highway to 163 in Prairie City, which at that time was 2-lane. But anyway, here I am in Colfax, and the tire is almost flat. And it's like, how the heck did that happen? So as it was hissing away like a rattlesnake, I tried to put more air into it, and I got it about halfway full, and got back in the car, and I thought, in my 19-year-old mind, I thought, well, if I drive really fast and I don't stop, maybe it'll ride on the other 3 wheels, and it'll just kind of, like that. I was desperate. Of course, it didn't work that way. By the time I got to the stop sign in Prairie City, the tire was completely flat. So I got onto 163, and I was driving about 25 miles an hour on the shoulder of the road. And I thought, come on, Todd, you can go faster. So I got up to 30, and by that time I was hearing this. What do you think that was? The tire was shredded and was slapping up against the side of the car. If you would have been a person being outside of it, it would have looked really ridiculous. So I slowed it back down so it would not destroy the body of my car, and I said, I will get the Pella. I will get the Pella. I have to get the Pella. It's the only town big enough that has a service station to change my tire. By this time, it's about 12:30 in the morning. I'm still like 15 miles from Pella, saying, I have to get the Pella. If I go 10 or 15 or 20 miles an hour, I will get the Pella. So about 1:30 in the morning, I got the Pella. The car was small. I was not planning to sleep in my car. I didn't have a blanket. It was early March. I did have my pillow, so I kind of dozed in and out of consciousness for about 5 hours or so. And I awoke to the sun coming up, and to the sound of somebody laughing. Well, the person was laughing at my car, and that there basically was no tire left on it. It was just the rim by that point. So I got up and I said, "Hey, I really need your help. Can you replace my tire?" "Well, what size is it?" Well, I gave them the size. They said, "We normally don't carry that size. That's pretty small because it's a small car. But let's check in, I mean, it's a small auto shop. But I'll check and see if we have something." They had something. And then, silly me, I realized, and I don't remember exactly how this went, I didn't have cash, or I didn't have a check, or they only took cash, or something like that. I don't remember, but I couldn't pay them. And I said, "I hate to tell you this, but I have no money. I'll have to get to Ottumwa to get some money." Okay. They offered to do it anyway, took down my name and address, and said, "When you get home, you put a check in the mail, or put some cash in the mail, and you send it here." I said, thank you so much, thank you. I wanted to share this story. Well, by the way, I did get the tire replaced and on my way to Ottumwa safely. I wanted to share this story because initially it sounds like a story about self-will. It's all about me. I'm gonna do this. Those drunk guys woke me up. I'm going home. And I'm gonna get to Pella now that I have a flat tire. And there was some of that self-will there. But I also started to realize God's will makes itself very clear even when we're not consciously aware of it. And it even happens if we don't want it. That's the beauty of it. Okay, so what happened? Okay, the tire didn't blow out and I didn't get in a wreck on the interstate. God's will. There was no snow on the ground or ice. It was not 15 degrees. It was in the mid-30s, so when I slept in the car, I was kind of chilly, but I was not shivering cold. And it was early March, so it could have been 15 degrees. It was in the mid-30s. They had the right size of tire. They just happened to have the right size of tire in the shop in Pella. And they gave me the honor system of letting me go home and mail them a check to their shop in Pella. And I was home safely by 8 o'clock in the morning. I was just so incredibly blessed. And the thing was, I did not even have a concept of God at that time. It was just, here I am all by myself, but I'm never by myself. And so having that acknowledgement and awakening to know and realize the gifts and how Spirit works in our lives, even when we don't see it, is divine will. I want to thank you all for joining me today, and thank you so much for being with me and sharing with me, to allow me to share with you. Thank you so much. And now to our song, I've Got Peace Like a River. I invite you to close your eyes and take 3 long, relaxing breaths. Imagine, if you will, slowly walking down a path in the north woods or in the mountains. You smell the evergreen trees and the fresh earth. As you look up, you can see the trees against the bright blue sky. Feel the gravel under your shoes. Listen to the birds and the breeze in the pines, and the sound of a nearby stream. Ahead of you, you come upon a beautiful, clear pool of water. A small waterfall 10 feet above cascades into the pool. As you look down at yourself, you realize that you already have your swim attire on. Take off your shoes and shirt in anticipation of playing in this sacred pool of divine will. You step in and get wet, and the temperature is perfect. Stand under the waterfall and feel the water in your hair. You notice a small rubber raft in the pool. Slowly climb up onto the raft and let yourself rest in the warm sun. You notice the raft moving slowly towards the front of the pool, where a 20-foot wide stream opens up. Allow yourself to start floating peacefully down this crystal clear stream, slowly meandering. You are now in the divine flow and will of God. You are perfectly safe. You will not run into any boulders or logs, no insects to bite you, and no bears to stalk you. You hear the gentle babble of the stream and feel occasional spray of water upon you. Just let yourself float down the stream with no worries whatsoever. Try to align yourself with divine will over an issue that may be troubling you at this time. Not my will, but thy will. Not my will, but thy will. Not my will, but thy will. You notice another pool of water. Your raft effortlessly floats into this second pool, which looks much like the first one. Know, my friends, that you are now aligned with divine will, that a solution is forthcoming for your situation, and there is no need to fret or worry. As you step off your raft, feel the pebbles and sand under your feet in the pool. As you glance over to the pool's edge, you notice that your clothes, a towel, and drinking water have magically appeared there. Gently step out of the pool, dry off, and get dressed, knowing that you can come back to this place any time you desire. As you become more aware of this place and time in this sanctuary, take one additional deep, refreshing breath. And slowly open your eyes. As we slowly go back to the phrase, I've got love like a mountain.
Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.